gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Musical People and Journeys. Oh, and my God, have we got a special edition for you tonight, because we are interviewing, oh yes, hold on your hats here, people. We have got Paul Vissar from Black, and I say this very carefully, Orchid Empire.
Orchid.
I say, no, it was a joke. There we go. No, because it's a bit of an in-joke, everybody. I say Orchid rather than Orchid, so I just thought we had to test Orchid, but there we go. So,
it turns out a lot of people have never pronounced that word before, and they've only read it, and then whenever I talk to them, they look at the word in the name and go, oh. So it's happened many times. In fact, it's happened...
I know, but I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is with that word. I keep saying orchid, orchid. No, I tried to say orchid and I got it right. I mean, oh my God.
Nigel, you did it with gobsmack. You kept calling them gobsmack.
I know, right? It wouldn't change me, though. It wouldn't change me.
Well, look, for the sake of kind of swiftness, we can just call it BOE. It's fine.
BOE. What? No, we're gonna get this elephant out of the room, because I want to know who the evil or the gothic evil botanist that named the band was, because I can only describe whoever decided to name that as an evil gothic botanist. Who was it?
I really wish that I knew an evil gothic botanist. No, actually, I had a conversation with Billy about this the other day, because I think I said in an interview I couldn't remember, and then he was like, yes you can. We had a whole thing about it, and then so basically we were just chatting. This is a long time ago, to be fair. It's many tours and beers ago, but we were having a conversation, just throwing stuff around. I think it was Billy that came up with it, which is probably why he wanted to remind everybody that it was actually him. I don't know where he got it from. It just, these things just have a way of appearing out of the sort of subconsciousness of all three of us. So it's just a spur of the moment thing, and the words sounded good together and they felt good together, and it kind of works. So there isn't really like a deep meaning behind it. You have to make one up. But well, there might be, but I don't know what it is. It does Billy.
Because Billy is subconscious. He is an evil gothic botanist. I mean, it's very. I mean, it's just that's what he is. You know,
he's at least two of those things.
Excellent. No, and the other thing, Paul. Do you know what? I was trying a bit of research on, and I thought, what are the guys' names? I've never seen their names. You don't have your names of your band on your website. You don't have your names of your band on your Facebook page. I had to go and find some Wikipedia to get your names, for God's sake. It doesn't...
I mean, I struggle to believe that the sort of vast resources of the internet were completely unable to help you. I mean,
I found you eventually.
What that means is that you need to buy a CD and read the liner notes, isn't it? Or a vinyl. That's what needs to...
That's obviously coming. So tell me about the composition of your band. Obviously, you have yourself and your lead guitar and vocalist. Is that right?
I'm the only guitar, so yeah.
Well, what about you have bass guitar, don't you, with Dave? Is David the bass guitar?
Yeah, but we've always really enjoyed being a three-piece. It's been we were all in a four-piece band before, and this band kind of came out of that when it sort of ended, and it's we were actually just talking about it. It's just like a really nice compact way of doing it. It's obviously worked really well in the past for like Biffy and bands like The Police and stuff. It's like if you strip it back, you kind of have an opportunity to actually be quite big. And a lot of bands, if you think about it, are actually a three-piece band with a singer, like Skunk Anansie or Rage or those kind of bands. So it really, I don't know, it just feels quite streamlined. So yeah, it's myself on guitar and vocals, Billy Freedom on drums, and he also sings, which people might not know, but he's on quite a lot of the recordings. He's a great singer. He just doesn't want to wear the Britney Spears mic for the live thing. And then Dave Ferguson on bass and BVs. So there's a lot to do between the three of us.
And so the question here then is that, because we're called MPJ, Musical Peoples and Journeys, because we're on a journey in discovering new bands and reviewing albums, etc. as well. But it all stems out of COVID and realization of how important music is in people's lives and the journeys that they kind of go on. So let's just dial this back a little bit then and go, when did it all start? Did you know Billy and Dave previous before you wanted to get into music? Were you boyhood friends, or is that something you've met them through music?
I mean, we've met through music, but I've been working with Billy since 2003 because he produced a band I was in at the time. So I've known him for a very long time. And Dave joined the band that me and Billy were in 2008. So we've been working together for a long time, and started BOE in, I think, about 2011 was when we first started and first started doing things. Obviously, the first record didn't come out for quite a few years after that. So we've met through music, but it was quite interesting meeting Billy in his role as a producer. It was a very different role from being in a band, and it was only after a lot of heckling from me that I managed to get him to actually be in a band with me. He was in a band called Queen Adrena before that, which were a great band and did loads of big shows and toured with, Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson and Deftones, all these massive acts. So I was like, come and be in my band. He's like, no. And then, we started Cape Fear together and went through a few different lineup changes over the years. But it's been an amazing thing. And we've also worked together for a long time as producers. So we run a commercial recording studio in London, and that's been since 2014. So we're full-time doing music for other people as well as for ourselves, which I think is really important, because we're not just focusing on the band. We're always focusing on music in a wider sense and loads of different genres as well. So I think that's been really important for our kind of relationship.
And so, when did it all start for you then? In terms of when you were growing up, were your parents a major influence, or did you rebel and go in? I'm going into rock music, or did you study music? And how did it all start for you when you were a kid?
I mean, kind of all of that, apart from the rebellion bit, I suppose, because my dad is a jazz saxophone player and also a producer and a kind of composer of music, and he first got me into doing piano when I was 5. My mum also plays piano and oboe, but there's not much call for oboe. Unless you're going to be in an orchestra. Then I got first sort of taste of rock and roll, playing electric guitar when I was 10. And then, because my dad's a musician, he built a studio in our house. So I've been making records since I was 11 years old, building the studio. And then I just wrote it off as a career. I was just like, it's going to be a thing I enjoy, and it's fun. I love making songs. And my brother's a drummer. He's also a very good producer now. But I just thought it was never going to be something that I would consider as an actual career, because it just seemed too. It's like wanting to be an astronaut. It just seemed too ridiculous. But I'd kind of applied for university, didn't get into the places I want to go to, and had a rethink and a gap year, and thought actually music is what I really want to do. So I'm going to study that. So I went to Brunel University and studied music technology there. It still didn't really turn into a career at that point, but at least it kind of was a focus for me.
Let's stop here. What did you study at Brunel? Music theology or music?
No, but that's an amazing made-up subject.
It would be amazing. That's right. Yeah, sorry. That's
no, it's called creative music technology, which I suppose is different from
music technology. Right.
I suppose that's different from uncreative music technology, which I don't know what that would be. But so it was like engineering, but the first year of it was shared with the people who were just doing a music course. So it was like music theory, and it was a really good grounding in a lot of ways, and it was good to meet a bunch of people that were into the same thing. But at the same time, it was in a university that was not just a music college. It was full of people doing complete different stuff: science, maths, engineering, sport, which meant that it was a broad spectrum of people that I was interacting with, and it wasn't just, a load of nerdy guitarists talking about scales, which I think would have put me off. I don't think I could have. In fact, the old joke is if you actually qualify from Berkeley or one of those places, then you aren't going to make it, because all the people that make it leave to go and do Dream Theater or whatever it is that they're doing while they're studying. I did all of that, and then just got a job in a guitar shop in my gap year and carried it on. And I had quite a long career working in the sort of in the corporate sector, but it's like selling musical instruments and selling studio equipment and knowing all those people, and got made redundant from that job in 2014 and decided to start our own place, because we'd already been producing other artists, and I'd had a top 25 album with Petula Clark as a producer and a songwriter before leaving work full time and decided
Wow.
to, and we were like, you know what, let's go and do it properly. So we found a place, and we've been here ever since. Sorry. You can't just drop the mic there, okay, and expect me to like just gloss over. Sorry, you produced Petula Clark's album. How the heck did that come about? I mean, did he just respond to you some advert on the internet or something? How did that happen? No, because I'll tell you what, that is not how albums are ever made. I got to know a really awesome guy called John Williams, not the John Williams or the other John Williams, but the other John Williams.
Oh, John Williams, right? Yeah, got you there. Yeah, go on.
Who's a fantastic producer and A&R guy, I met him because I was working in a shop and he was buying studio equipment, and I helped him set up his studio, and we started writing songs and stuff, and then. I think a song that we wrote got pitched to Sony, and he knew her and she really liked it, and she ended up doing it as a single, and then they asked for a whole album, and so I ended up co-writing and co-producing the album with John in 2012. So this is while BOE had just started, and we were doing, I was doing this complete kind of very different style of stuff. And all three of us are producers and have worked with loads of different artists our whole careers.
Out of curiosity, I mean, how does they, in terms of when you produce an album like this, do you get like you don't have to answer it, but do you get like a flat fee for producing it, or do you get like a share of the revenues, or how does that work exactly? I'm just curious.
I can give you a very detailed breakdown of how the whole music industry's sort of financial scheme works, because it's really complicated, but essentially it could be any of those things. You could get a fee for your services. You could also get like percentage points of the royalties from the exploitation of that record in terms of the physical.
Yeah.
You could also get royalties from being a songwriter, and your share of the royalties from the actual publishing side, the writing side of the song. So and that can be when it's broadcast, but also when it's mechanically reproduced. So it's a very complex, very confusing thing, and that's why most people in bands don't know anything about it or how to do it. So it's essentially all of the above. There's loads of different ways. So one of the things we did at the very beginning was we got into doing music for television. So we are one of the primary writers for MasterChef on TV, for example. So, or like, I don't know, it's several, like probably as many as about 800 tracks on MasterChef have been made by us. And when you do stuff for television, you're more likely to get paid as a royalty for when it's broadcast, for example. That's how that works. So I bet you didn't realise that BOE made music for MasterChef.
Well, all I can say about that is we are really cooking now, aren't we? I mean,
oh God.
Just what?
You went there.
I did, and I will continue to go there. Put me in the L.
Our front of house guy Martin, he's an absolute legend. When he comes on tour with us, we give him a strict 2 pun per day limit, and if he does more than 2, then he's like overdrawn for the next day. So I don't think you'd long.
Out.
I'm going to break the bank. So don't worry about it. So no limits have been put. No limits. You don't put Nige in the pun corner. All right, it just doesn't happen. So that's amazing. Then so what's been, so obviously you've done Petula Clark. What's been your biggest claim to fame then, apart from MasterChef obviously, but what's been your favourite thing that you've produced apart from your own material, of course, for other people?
We've worked on lots of different stuff. So we also have a partnership with an amazing guy called Hugh Goldsmith. We have a production company together with him, so we do a lot of pop stuff with him. So we did the record for Blue, the most recent boy band, Blue, with the most recent record they did. Also, I love doing heavy music. Obviously, that's my kind of passion. So I've been working with lots of different bands. There's a Japanese metal band called A Spirit de Air. I don't know if you know those guys, but you should definitely check it out. And Kai is a really cool dude. And I've mixed all of his stuff for the last few years, basically. So that's been one of my favourite things to do. It's really, really fun.
Okay, so you mentioned your passion was in heavy music. So I'm just going to quickly rewind here a little bit as well and go. So when you were growing up, what was your biggest influence then? In terms of when did you think to yourself, heavy rock music that's me, that's my thing? When did you tune into that? How old were you, and what made you go, oh wow, yeah?
It's probably listening to like Led Zeppelin records and Pink Floyd and just, I mean, it's not heavy metal, but like all the stuff like Jimi Hendrix and all the guitar based stuff that was really exciting that my parents and my stepdad had. My stepdad's a great guitar player, and it was just really inspiring to hear like kind of edgy sounding music. You get obviously loads of pop kind of thrown at you all the time by just the world at large, but heavy music tends to be a bit more niche, and when you actually come across it as a kid, it's really powerful. I remember the first time I heard like the opening riff to Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's like that, those moments like that stay with you. And then because my brother played drums and I played guitar, we would just always jam, so we would just try and like learn the whole of a Tool record or things like Deftones. I think for me, because I was born in the early 80s, so I'm like all about that kind of new metal and the kind of grunge into new metal. So grunge was like super important, like Nirvana and Soundgarden, Alice in Chains are like heroes, into like Deftones and then the sort of like all the new metal kind of stuff took over, like Korn and Slipknot and Nine Inch Nails. Not that really new metal, but that's the same sort of time. Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and all those bands. Those are the bands that like me and my 14-year-old mates were going crazy to. I'm not sure if that's the right sound. Yeah, about that.
No, it's fascinating because actually, because I'm born in the '60s, so growing up very much in the '80s, and I think and obviously Iron Maiden and so forth, and watching Iron Maiden was just phenomenal, and for me, one of the biggest epiphanies was listening to obviously Guns N' Roses, and that album was just like mind blowing. And then when all this new metal came out, I kind of fell out of love with all of that, really. It didn't really float my boat, and I got stuck in the 80s for probably the next 20 years, really, to be honest with you. Kind of missed the new metal, then missed all the Kings of Leon stuff that came out. But it does shape you, doesn't it? There's no two ways about it. That sort of music then will shape you kind of going forward. So.
Yeah, the main thing for me was all the stuff I was listening to that I grew up with, which was like the generation before's music. It was songs. It was incredible songs, and that stayed with me. So that's the main thing. I was really excited by the power of rock music, but I was also really inspired by the kind of the ability to weave a melody. And so it's funny because the scream style of vocal stuff that came later, it never really did anything for me that much. It never was something I wanted to emulate, and still kind of isn't really. But the heaviness of the instrumentation was really cool. So yeah, it's weird. I think you're just always a bit of a kind of, you're always going to be positioned by the time you grow up. And what there's actually a lot of really interesting neuroscience research about how your tastes are made when you're at your early age, and it's very complicated, and it's kind of random, but that's why you'll get two people who are exactly the same age, and the first thing they listened to was the Rolling Stones, and the other person listened to the Beatles, and they latch onto that, and forever they're that, not that, and it's like nobody decided it for them. It just happened, but it felt really tribal and really important and really kind of like your clique. And I think that happens a lot. But I'm very eclectic, so I'll listen to lots of different styles of music. And I think that's because I grew up with just as much jazz and classical as I did with anything kind of pop or rock, but loads of it. And bands like Radiohead as well, bands which were kind of doing interesting stuff that I couldn't quite understand, and like I think that's always really important. Tool as well. I remember the first time I heard Tool, I was like, no, it's terrible, I hate this. And then I saw them live at like Ozfest or something, and I was like, oh, this is actually incredible, I totally understand this. And then I went and listened to the records again, and it made sense. It was the first time that's ever happened to me. It was really strange, and that kind of stayed with me. There's a lot of them in what we...
It's true, isn't it? When you first listen to an album, you kind of go, I don't get it, and then you listen to it again and again and again, and slowly but surely you start to love it. Isn't that right, Trish?
That's correct, Nigel.
I hear a little. Are we talking about Tempest?
No.
Something else.
No, we're talking about Tempest.
Right. Yeah.
So have you heard a band called White Raven Down? They won. I think your sound is very similar, and actually they've just gone to a three-piece. They lost the lead singer, and then they've just gone to a three-piece. And he was worried about his vocals. I saw them live, and they were just like, "I said, you don't have to worry about your vocals, mate. You're fantastic."
Hard work.
So how do you? I'm going to ask one more question, and then Trish has got probably. Have you got some questions, Trish? Because you know what you like. You get really annoyed if I ignore you and then don't allow you your questions. So I'm going to just suggest. Do you have some questions, Trish?
Of course I have.
Right. Well, I'm going to ask.
But I'm polite and will let you lead the conversation.
Lead away as ever. Well, I was just checking. So anyway, Paul, how do you describe your music? Because your website's very fluffy and gives a very commercial kind of view of your world. But I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. How? Because I'm going to be really interested because I have my take on it. And how do you describe your music exactly?
Yeah. I suppose it is quite hard to describe in a simple way because it's quite complicated and it's quite eclectic in its own way. But I can, in terms of how we feel about it, we're all just essentially inspired by lots of different things, and what we make is the music that we really, really love. It's not anything contrived. It's just the things we make are the things that make us go, yeah, let's do that. And it's not with the thought of anyone else. It's just really selfish. But because there's three of us and we've all got very different tastes, it's going to end up being kind of eclectic. And then by extension, I think other people find something they connect with too. But we're definitely not thinking about, we haven't got like a preconceived idea of saying like, we are a black metal band, we're going to make black metal, that kind of thinking. Which is totally fine. It's actually really convenient if you have an extremely strong identity and you go, this is what we are going to do. But what we're going to do is can be described as we're going to make cool riffs and nice songs and things. It's much harder to pin it down. But I think what it basically comes down to is it is metal at its core, but it's definitely on the progressive side of metal, and then it's melodic. But the problem is if you say it's melodic progressive metal, then that puts you in this shoebox with a certain number of other bands, which although they're all great, it's like that isn't really what we intended. It's not like, oh, that's what we want to be. So I don't know. It's just sort of heavy music, but with no scream vocals.
It is interesting because Simon blew me away with his description on the podcast in terms of describing what is prog rock, which I utterly despise, and your style of music, and you could be categorized towards that, but it's too melodic. And also with prog rock you get disconnected. It's almost like, this is my world, lump it or like it, take it as you will, but this is my journey, I don't give a shit whether you like it or not, that this is mine. And whereas and so you get it, whereas he described it as like you just do never get disconnected. It takes you along. And I call it I call it the elevator pitch, because if you go up in an elevator and you open the doors and you go into the room and there's one view and you can see one view, and you go into that room and there's one view and it's a nice view, but it gets a bit boring after a little while, and that's your traditional prog rock. Whereas you guys go, hey, welcome to my room, and oh, there's a nice view. Oh, and then suddenly, let me just open this blind up here, and they go, oh, I like that view as well. And then, but you still got your eye on that view, and then you go, right, and you open another window up and another blind. You go, wow, that's great. And then suddenly you layer on your music, which is why I think it takes such a while. Because I literally, and I kid you not, I listened to your album and I didn't know why I liked it, because it's not, and then I listened to it again and I go, I like it, I love it, why do I love it? And then I loved it, and then the third time I listened to it, I was like hooked, absolutely hooked. And it's just like, and and I can only describe it. I think about it. Why do I like it? And you just keep it up and up blinds, and then go, oh, by the way, look at my picture on the wall. It's awesome, isn't it? And you go, yeah, I love it, and I love the view behind me. So
there's another thing there, which is that although I said we make music only considering kind of what we like, I don't mean as players, and that's the key thing. I think for a lot of prog rock bands, what they're thinking, and I use that in the kind of classic sense of the word, the kind of extending from that kind of Deep Purple, old school, like prog rock, Hawkwind kind of vibe. I think what they're looking for is satisfaction of playing their instrument, satisfaction of performing their parts. And when we're talking about the stuff that we're inspired by and what we love, we're putting ourselves in the position of being the listener. So we're making the music that gets us excited as listeners. And then that's also, it's kind of a nightmare to play, to be honest. It's occasionally fun to play, but it's normally just really irritatingly hard. But the main thing is that we're not trying to curate an experience for other people necessarily, although we're conscious of that. But the experience we're trying to curate is that of ourselves as a listener really enjoying the music. And that's the key difference, I think. Because as soon as you get, and jazz does this as well, as soon as it's all about how it feels to perform, it can be very compelling from the outside because you can see someone getting lost in that world. But it also can be kind of inherently isolating for the listener because you're outside of it. You're only ever voyeuristic. And we want people to feel like they're part of our experience as listeners as we're enjoying the music that we happen to also be making, I think is the best way to put it.
Well, equally, no prog rock, I call it the whoa-ho factor, will ever have the whoa in there, which you use to brilliant effect. So melodic. So it is, and you did it in the sophomore. You only did it on one track on sophomore, where you used the whoa-ho, and you also did it on one track. And I was listening today in the car, and I can't really remember the name of the track now, but you just use it on one song, and you use it to, I think, quite hypnotic melodic effect. That back of it. It's just. It's enchanting. It's absolutely enchanting. So no prog, no decent theme, Dreamcatcher, all of those would never use the whoa-ho. Never.
I feel like a lot of the proggier fans don't really like us very much because we don't do enough of the sort of 8-minute wig out stuff that they're really into, and that's totally fine. Same way that people who love death metal are not going to enjoy the kind of, although actually I'm always surprised by how a lot of people who are super into very heavy stuff do quite find something they quite like. But yeah, I think that's because I spend all my time listening to and making lots of pop music, and that's, all three of us do. It's like a huge part of our DNA is the understanding of what makes a melody exciting and in the same way that a guitar riff, for me, you kind of need to be able to like hum that riff for it to be a real thing. You can't really hum like 0100110. It's like, that's really exciting to listen to, but it doesn't stay with you in the same way. It's like it's kind of like you watch like an amazing action film and there's a huge scene with like explosions and cars getting stuck in giant rocks and falling on landmines, because I watched Fast and Furious 9 recently and it's not very good. Or it's like that stuff happens and that's really like, wow. But it doesn't really move you emotionally. It doesn't really stay with you. It doesn't make you see the world slightly differently. And I think what I'm looking for in music when I love it is stuff that it does have the impact, but it also like has a lasting effect on the way you see things and the way you feel. So hopefully that's what we're doing with the whoa-whoa-whoas.
I love them. Generally, I do. I love them. Okay, so Trish, let's have Trish time.
Let's have what I fear might be a rare moment of silence from Nigel.
Oh, I love you.
I'm dreaming up some puns here. You'll be fine.
Oh, God, no. Zip, zip, zip. How does your creative process differ from album to album?
It doesn't differ deliberately from album to album. It has differed because of just circumstance. So I think up until before we did Semaphore. So Archetype and Eugen, essentially, it was very let's play stuff in a room and jam and see what happens, and then we'll develop it as well. And that's cool. Really love doing that. We still do that now. But Semaphore was the first time that we kind of wrote the record all together, but in the studio. So it would be somebody will come up with an idea for a drum pattern, and somebody might come up with another thing that works on top of that, and kind of just experimenting and going, okay, cool, this feels like it's working. And then we co-wrote once we had riffs and we had ideas and we co-wrote melodies as well. So it was sort of collaborative, but not in a jam kind of way. Tempest was even more refined like that. So some of the stuff we started writing for it, we actually wrote independently of each other in like 2020, even before Semaphore was out. So there's been riffs. In fact, The Sun was like one of the first riffs we wrote. But it's the one where, to the biggest extent, has been we'd work on the music. We'll finish the music to a demo point where it's MIDI drums and it's not real yet, but it's all mapped out. And then there's guitar and bass, and then we will literally all together write the best melody we can and tweak it until we're happy with it. And then we'll all together sit and write the best lyric we can for that melody, which I think is probably, I don't know if any other band does it this way, and it's technically ridiculous because it seems like a really bad way to write a song.
No,
it's like,
everybody we've spoken to goes, they write the music and then the lyrics. And then when I watch a Deep Purple documentary, they always write the lyrics and then the music to it. So, but every new band we're coming through seems to follow that same technique. So.
Yeah, the thing for me is less about with the order in which it happens, and more about the inspiration for it and the fact that it's collaborative. So, like, we'll have like an idea for the whole theme of the album, and then we'll have an idea for that song, and we'll literally shoot the lyric out between the three of us, instead of it being like one person coming in going, "Guys, I've written this song. Let's try it out." And I think that's much more common. And I guess that it could be, I suppose if we weren't also used to the production process, it could be dangerous that would get a bit vanilla and get just boring. But we're always in the habit of trying to push songs to be as good as they can be for other people. So we all just put our sort of producer hat on when we're not coming up with the idea, and it's sort of like simultaneous. So this is the most refined that process has been. We may change that again. It wasn't like a deliberate thing. It's just the way it came about. But in fact, we've already written a couple of riffs organically in rehearsal, so there you go. So it's already changing by mistake, but so that's basically how it's changed. It's got a bit more refined and a bit more kind of studio based as opposed to rehearsal room based.
What's the best show or tour you've ever played, and why was it so special to you?
That's a cracker. I like that one.
And it's an easy one because we went on tour with Skunk Anansie and we played. The best one was not Brixton Academy. That was like an incredible show that was sold out and amazing, except it was super stressful because it's like, the stakes are so high. It's the first show we played with them. It was like, ridiculous. We've known Skin for quite a long time because she was in the building when we were doing Archetype, and she popped her head around the door and was like, "What's this?" And we're like, "Hello, come and have a listen." So that was kind of nice, and it took that long till 2019 till we were able to actually coordinate to do a show together, and they were very kind to take us out. And then the support band for the whole tour quit or something, so we got asked to fill in. And the shows we did after that, so we did some more shows, and we did the one in Glasgow. And I got to tell you, when you're like a kid playing guitar and you imagine what it must be like to be like a rock star, that's the first time in my life that it's actually been that. Like, we were backstage getting ready, putting our stuff on, getting out, looking at the clock, someone goes, "On you go," and you walk out, and I was like, ugh. And by this time everyone knew who we were because we played a couple of shows, so they were obviously gone and checked it out, and the whole crowd were like, "Yeah!" And then we started playing, and it was absolutely incredible. And that's one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be the sort of -2 raining, loading out a massive guitar cab down a flight of stairs in Skegness. It's the bit that's supposed to be, even though the majority of touring in the band, I got to tell you, is the latter.
Oh yeah, we know. Yeah, we know. Yeah, we've learned so much about the industry in the last year and a half than I thought. Comparison to what we've had talking to different bands and how things are done. So, but
yeah, for sure. I feel like you haven't lived until you've carried something very heavy down a very slippery staircase. But yeah, so that was the one so far, I think. Even though there's been so many, it's been amazing. But that was a nice one because nothing went wrong. And so, sometimes you get these massive shows, like we did Download, and all of our monitoring halfway through the set just stopped working. So it was really panicky, and it's like that becomes the fun part. So, but that was just sort of unadulteratedly
So
awesome.
when did you do Download?
That was in 2018.
2018.
Yeah. When we were on tour with a band called Black Map. We did a bunch of shows with them.
Right.
And then did Camden Rocks and Download that year. Yeah. It seems like a long time ago now because so much has happened. And I suppose it is actually also a long time ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun.
Check it out.
Except it should have been more fun than it was. That was the problem. Yeah.
Okay, so you've basically answered then my next question, which was on the flip side of that. What was the worst show or tour you've ever played, and what made it so terrible?
No. I have not answered that question. We've done everything you can imagine doing in like a Spinal Tap kind of world of being on. But the one that always it's kind of fun because it's not actually just horrendous it was actually quite horrendous. We did a tour with Head PE, which is great, and we did, I think it was like second show in Huddersfield in the parish. I decided to jump into the crowd like in the middle of the set, except that the thing I stood on was a monitor speaker that was just on like a beer crate, and as soon as I stood on it, I didn't realize it was on a beer crate, but it was. As soon as I stood on it, it rolled over, so I just went like that, and my feet like went towards the ceiling, and I landed on the back of my ribs on the speaker, which is like this big wooden heavy thing, and just completely smashed up all of my ribs. And I didn't miss a note, I don't think, but
wow.
And then it was a self-drive tour as well, so I was doing half the driving, and it was absolutely miserable. I don't know if you've ever like bruised or broken ribs, but not very fun. Yeah. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Ouch!
It's incredible, and you can't do anything. You know, you literally cannot do anything, and it's so it's really painful. You struggle to breathe and stuff as well. So
so we're probably 10 more shows without a day off and driving all over the country and lifting all of the really heavy stuff all the time. That's what you probably shouldn't do, but that is what we did.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll hand back to Nigel because I have one last question, but I'll do that towards later on.
Okay.
So I want to talk about your voice because it's really interesting because like there's obviously a turn. You know, one of my other loves, which I've grown to love over the last few years, is symphonic metal, particularly female lead symphonic artists. So yeah, because the combination is just phenomenal. And when you look at bands of your ilk, of similar stuff, the voice, you've got a different tone to your voice. It's kind of, and I can see maybe where this pop influences come in, but you've got a very low kind of soft melodic voice. Is that intentional? Is that something that you that's just a natural thing, or is it pitched because of the sort of music that you're playing? So
I think basically that's probably one of the only things which I've never in BOE. It's probably the least kind of affected version of my vocal possible. It's just the way I sound. So I obviously for other stuff that I've done before, I've had more of an influence over like I'm going to deliberately sing in a certain style or whatever. But yeah, no, completely unconscious, except from the point of view of just trying to do it as well as I can. It's not ever been something we've thought about, and it covers a lot of ground actually. It's like I'm quite often singing quite high and quite low in the same sort of song, and like dynamically obviously there's bits where it's quite small and then really quite big, and it's something that I've been pushing myself. I've never considered myself to be like a singer. I only started singing in like my mid-20s when I started the band with Billy. So I was like, let's do a band, and he's like, who's going to do vocals? And I said, well, I'll learn. And that was when I started. So I sort of treated it like learning an instrument. So it's something that I've always felt has been like really hard and really something I have to really like practice and focus on and work on, which isn't really how I feel about guitar. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of the things I don't really feel like I've got a lot of choice over. It's just that's just it. That's what you get.
Paul, you mentioned obviously I'm really curious because you obviously seem quite ingrained into the industry, and you obviously know a hell of a lot about the industry. And I'm fascinated because when when Hearts and Hand Grenades, one of the early bands we reviewed and did an interview with, touring here in the UK, and they are amazing. And I was saying to them about why wouldn't they be able to, like, they're good enough to be a very support of a big band. And Mike, the guitarist, was telling me in the US in particular, you have to literally buy your support slot, and it can cost absolutely like $20,000, and plus a cut of your merc, which is just bizarre, really. Is that the same sort of environment here in the UK, or how does it work here in the UK? Because I imagine with your contacts and stuff, you might be able to get some bigger gigs, but how does it work?
So the reality of the situation with all this stuff is it's always case by case, and you never quite know. The only way that you definitely, as a band that doesn't have its own sort of 2,000 capacity venue following, the only way you're going to get those support gigs usually is if you are literally friendly with the band or someone that they have to want you to do it. That's the first.
Yeah.
Punk and Nancy shows for us, for example, which are like academy shows, like 3,000, 5,000 caps. That's only because Skin literally wanted us to do the show. That's why we got to do the show. So there may have been other ways that bands would have got that opportunity, but usually they have to be asked. And because frankly, they don't need to take a support. They're not selling tickets at that level. They're selling out all their shows, and the support band is there because the headliner liked them. And that's probably the majority of the bigger shows that people go and see. That's how that's working. Now, of course, there is an opportunity in certain situations to offer bands to buy onto a tour. Buy-ons are a strange one because on the face of it, you'd think that's a ridiculous thing to do. Obviously, you're going to spend like £20,000 on buying onto a tour, and it is a bit mercenary, and it can be a bit shit. But the thing is, if it's the kind of tour, if you're doing like 30 dates around the US and you're not from the US, and you're playing 3,000 to 5,000 people every night, that's a decent marketing spend to reach that. So there is a point, and it's like all these things where you get this kind of economy of scale. There's a point where if it's so big, it's kind of worth it. But then weirdly, the bigger stuff, you usually they're not going to be buy-ons. It's going to be like third or fourth band on a big package or something might be a buy-on. It just depends. It's case by case. I don't look down on people that offer or take buy-ons, because I think you've really got to assess each opportunity as it comes. And one thing that people don't understand as like a punter, because why would you, is that if you are not headlining a 2,000 capacity venue, then it's costing you money to go on tour.
Oh yeah,
there's no doubt about that. You may be breaking even, or you might be making a small profit, or very likely you're making a loss. And the only reason to do that is to basically offset that loss against the growth in your band's sort of renown, which is going to help you get the next level up, right? So to go from like 50 to 100 mates, or sort of 50 friends and family, to like 100 people that care, to 200 or 300 up, it's a hard graft to get up to that level in a territory, because obviously you could do that in the UK and then still not be known at all in Europe or in the States, and it can be like a way of getting like a leg up to that level. But so you're always offsetting one loss or a different loss or whatever, until you are like really at that level where you're headlining and it's your show and you're getting a very good guarantee or some kind of share of tickets, or a combination of both, or one versus the other, or something like that. That's the way it basically works. So yeah, it's tricky, and also touring has got more and more and more expensive as time has gone on in the last few years. It's always been on that sort of trajectory, but I'd say our touring costs now are double what they were in 2019, 2020, sort of pre-pandemic 2020. So at least double.
And you've announced your tour. I think you're doing about 6 gigs in the UK. Is that right?
Gosh.
And obviously we can go to your Facebook page, etc. as well. But what sort of numbers are you going to be playing at then, in terms of the ticket sales that you're going to be looking at on the tour?
When we headline, we're talking 150 to 300 capacity kind of venues. That's where we, it's difficult to put into perspective sometimes when you're familiar with a band and you know them and you really like them and you think, wow, this is amazing, everyone must really like this. And it's like, yeah, in the world there are lots of fans for that music, but that isn't the same as being able to rock up to like Cambridge and find 300 people that want to see the band. I think it's hard to overestimate how much work that actually takes. And obviously getting taken out with a big headliner can really help boost the awareness. And obviously you'll see a pickup in places where you play with larger headliners. So yeah, there's always, in every industry, there's never really like a sort of set path, if you know what I mean. I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding to think that there's always like one route. There's always loads of different routes. And in the music industry, it's especially fraught with like just so many complicated decisions and so many things that are very hard to understand, and so many things that just work a certain way, and when you don't know how they work, you don't know. When you do, you do. So it seems so easy, doesn't it, to be a punter at a show and kind of go, yeah, cool, that's like, I'm going to go to the Forum and see a band I really like. It's like, yeah, but it's to get to the point where you can fill a place like that is mad. It's an incredible achievement to even get to that point, and that feels low level because we're thinking about like architects or kind of we're thinking about those bands that can that can do arena shows, and there's such a gulf between the kind of band that can. Well, a side issue there actually is in the industry itself. I am wondering where the next crop of like download headliners are, because they're the same people headlining now that were there when I was like 15. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out, because I feel like as an industry, we sort of must have been doing something. We must have neglected to train up the youth squad somehow, because there isn't another Metallica or another Iron Maiden or bands of that. They're getting there.
Well, no,
Alter Bridge playing.
They were, yeah.
Alter
Bridge were there, yeah. But they had the thing is, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I'm just interested to know what that's going to be like. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of another band that is going to have the same kind of career that Metallica had. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
No, and I think the problem is back in our days in the 80s and so forth, it was glam rock. It was top of the pile. It was it dominated the charts. I mean, one of my all-time favorite bands called Magnum. They got 2 singles on the top 10. And so you always it was more mainstream in the charts, whereas now pop just absolutely dominates. And so these bands and do not get that exposure to become in effect super bands, do they? So.
I actually don't think it's even a genre-specific thing. I think the way we all consume music has changed the way music, and it means that actually there's never going to be another Prince. There's never going to be another Michael Jackson. There's never going to be another Elton John. There's never going to be another artist, I don't think, of that level of. There's not another Elvis, a sort of ridiculous international fame or a career that lasts for sort of 50 years. Because is Ed Sheeran going to be touring when he's 70? I can't see it personally, but maybe. And he already is a legacy artist. Really, he's been around for quite a long time. So that even in the pop world, the biggest artists in the world are still nothing in terms of the longevity of the biggest artist in history. And I think the reason for that is exactly what you just said, which is that the way the exposure of media works now is much more granular. And yeah, there are huge household names, but you aren't forced to consume household names if you actually want to go and listen to Icelandic black metal, because you can just go and do that. You just ignore the mainstream. But before, there was no way of ignoring. You had to go to a concert or listen to the radio or buy a record. That was the only way to get music, right? So
also now you have radio specific. You've got Planet Rock, you've got Kerrang Radio, which back in when I was a teenager, it was literally Radio 1, Radio 2.
Yeah, and we've seen the rise and fall of MTV in the last 20 years. It's insane. If you think about the impact that had on the music industry, and now the fact that it is essentially meaningless relative to someone being on TikTok, is staggering. We're in a very weird little flash in the pan moment of in the music industry, where we all feel like there's this kind of legacy version of the music industry that was selling physical format like vinyl and CDs, and now there's this streaming model. But actually, if you think about it, the entire recorded music history is only about 100 years old. So it's actually all a flash in the pan. Even the stuff that we think as being the kind of the 60s and 70s, like the kind of legacy of the music industry, that was brand new, and people have been making music on, you know, organic acoustic instruments that wasn't recorded for 10,000 years before that. So
I think there's a level of augmentation, isn't it? Because I was stuck back in the 80s, always have been, and obviously with CDs coming out, I couldn't be asked to keep going to a record shop and go, am I going to like this band? Am I not going to like this band? And that moment, I still remember during the COVID times where as a family we subscribed to Amazon Music. And that opened up, and it was easy accessible for me. I looked at the top 100 album charts, recognised a few albums, didn't recognise anybody else on there. Went, right, I'm going to listen to every. It's true. So I've decided to listen to every single album in the top 100 albums, no matter what. Rap doesn't matter. I was going to expose myself, and I wrote a blog about it. And this is how this whole journey started. So I wouldn't be here talking to you today. If it wasn't for the accessibility of Amazon Music, and I think that's now led to the resurgence of vinyl, because I think people go, I've now got exposure to that album. A lot of my friends now do. They'll now go, that's the band I love, and now I'm going to go and buy the vinyl record for it because I love it so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's a music discovery system, and it's and the people that complain about it are usually either people that used to make a lot of money from the old system, or they just really understand what they're talking about. And like, it's actually a complete golden age for people that create music. It's very challenging to monetize it still, but let's face it, you could put together music that you exclusively make using like an old Game Boy, and that is a thing, by the way, chiptune. You can put that together and you can have a following that is rabid and cult and loves it. Would you have managed to get a record deal in 1972 for something that obscure? Of course you wouldn't. Not that that's physically possible, because again, you get my point. It's, you can do the most niche, weird stuff, and now magically you can reach the ears of people that actually want to hear that, and that's unbelievable. And that's the most powerful thing that's happened in decades for music. The problem is that it's happened at the same time as a really kind of strong existing power system that doesn't really want to change the way it's monetized and would like to keep all of the money, thanks very much. So it's hard for the bands. But if you can find a way of reaching people yourself, which takes hard work and money and all those other things, then you can actually market to them directly, and you can put your music directly in the hands of people that want to hear it, and they can come to your shows. And that's the thing that I think is really important, and that's new.
So let's talk about your shows and the album then. So the latest album that you have, Tempus Veritas. So I got that right. Said that right, didn't I? What's for you? You know, if you're going to say that you're going to play one, is there an album? Is there a song from the album, or that is your favourite, but it's different for when you play live, or is there one and the same? So, what's your favourite track from the album, and what's your favourite track to play live from that album?
Okay, so the one that I'm enjoying playing the most live is probably The Raven. That's really fun to play. But there's quite a few that we've not played live, because obviously they've only existed in studio land. So we've never. This is the first time we've done a tour with the newer stuff. So we have to see how that develops. But love stuff like Last Ronin as well is really fun.
Your favourite night?
Oh, Last Ronin is out of this bloody world, I tell you. It's just.
You picked one. I've got two. You picked one of them, The Raven.
The other one.
Weakness.
Right. See, I think that is a stealthy, absolute banger. Yeah. That like isn't as a single by season, which is fine. You know, that you can't pick them all. But for me, that feels like it's such a weird, like, random thing. It's the poppiest chorus ever. It's like proper kind of like Dance Gavin Dance, like post kind of pop, but it's also got the main riff at the beginning is really weird and wonky, and then the ending is like this stupidly heavy breakdown with a genuine blur in it, which is quite fun. So it's like that one really if you want to say someone like, you should check this band, I mean, it's might be quite divisive, but it definitely does both ends of what we do, like, and pushes.
It encapsulates everything.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, my phone's telling me I'm going to run out of battery soon.
Okay, right. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions, but let's go to your question then, Trish.
No, you've just asked it.
I know. I knew I was going to steal that. I knew I was going to steal that. So right. Okay. Now, the other day I was watching YouTube and I saw Steel Panthers on America's Got Talent.
Yep, they did that.
I know. It was amazing. It was just like, what? So, question. Would you, as a band, to get out to the masses, go on Britain's Got Talent?
No.
Why?
I'm quite glad that Steel Panther did it. I think they're absolutely amazing, by the way, because they've been around. People don't know this, but they've been around since the sort of 80s glory.
Yeah, right.
They are not like a piss take new thing. They're legit. And they're some of the best players out there, even though they are literally hilarious. I wouldn't do it because I think that the entire system of that makes for really good television and doesn't make for actually building anyone's audience.
Cool.
That's what I think.
It's commercial.
And it's not even the commercialness, it's the fact that it only exists for the sake of the television. It does not exist for the sake of the artist. And good luck to everyone that's on there. And there are some incredible artists that get found through there and then take themselves off and do amazing things. But if you think that being on one of those shows will give you a career, it might, but only if you were going to have one anyway.
Yeah.
So do you like, I mean, you write pop music, and I'm going to ask you, like, would you go on, would you ever produce something for Eurovision? Because I love Eurovision, and I think they've got...
I know the guys in Voyager a little bit. They've got, our old manages them. Lulu, she's awesome. And, my secret ambition is to write next year's Eurovision winning entry.
I think they did such a great job with Sam Ryder, and then I don't know what.
Saw him at the weekend. Just saying.
I don't know what they did this year.
I'm relatively close to that stuff. So yeah, it's we could have a whole conversation about it.
Well, I think the fact is that Britain leads the way in rock music. I don't care what they say, and you see some of these bands, apart from the German Screamo, which was just terrible. You looked at Maneskin and what that's done for it, and maybe that, and Sam Ryder was amazing, and it was great to see. And it was everybody goes, oh, they hate us again. No, they didn't. Our track was not very good
I agree.
Sorry, you're friends. We won't go there. So.
There's about an hour conversation there, which we could have. Let's not do it now.
No, your phone's about to run out, aren't you? So your phone's about to run out. So, if you last question for me then, if you had to go and want to see a band now, who would it be? If you had to pay good money, or you could get a VIP ticket from, who's the band for you right now that you would most like to listen to in that rock world right now?
Carnival. 100%.
Who, sorry?
Carnival. Do you know them? They're an Australian band.
No. Never heard of them.
Check them out. They're unbelievable.
Okay, cool. Well, our tip for you, if you like your side of music, listen to White Raven Down. They just supported Skinred in concert, actually, and you really must check this out. So from that side of things as well. So, listen. So we were talking off air, and there's a possibility that you might be adding some more dates to the tour. Is that right?
Not at all, but we are planning some more touring.
Excellent. So they might be coming close to us at some point.
We've got the little run, then we've got Westival on the 15th, which is an older shot. This is in July, I should say.
Sorry, where was Westival?
Westival's in Aldershot. So we're doing that in July, and then we're planning lots more stuff. So for later in the year, but it's all kind of forming at the moment. So you'll have to keep an eye out for that. But the most important stuff to remember is that we are on tour from Wednesday the 28th through to the 2nd of July around the UK, and it would be amazing to see people there.
So
we'll put that on our
Westford is Aldershot is like I saw the poster, but I couldn't see where Westford was, and Aldershot was like 20 minutes from us. So
I think but now I'm worried that it might not be, but I think it is.
I don't know. I'm Westival. Well, I know there's Wayfest,
We only just announced it, so check it out.
Cool.
Check
Oh,
it
I'll
out.
have to check
It's
it
on
out.
their Facebook, so we'll get it checked
Yeah.
out. So, well, listen, Paul, it has been an absolute joy. Thank you very much for
Thank
joining us
you
today.
so much.
And good luck with the tour. Good luck with the album. But I do have one question, but it's not for you, Paul. It's not for you. Trish, now, 3 people
God.
give this concert, this album, a 5. You give it a 2.5. You've listened to it. I know it's growing on you. So, if we had to start all over again, what are you gonna?
Nigel,
What would you rate?
why do you do this to me?
Because it's my
Why
job.
are you always right?
Because I tell you I'm right now.
It's because you've got a halo behind
That's
you.
right. I've got a halo behind me now.
Oh,
Being honest now.
God.
Don't just because Paul is here. Give us like you're gonna.
Not at all.
I have listened to it, okay, another 3 times today,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'd give it a 4.
Yay!
Okay.
And you know what? You would be in our Hall of Fame, Paul. If she'd done that, you'd be in our
Oh
Hall of
God,
Fame.
yeah, just put that on
but
me.
we do have a no takesy backy policy on our podcast. But
No,
but,
I'll take it though. I'll take the kind of regret of the downgrade in the first.
Yeah,
place. So,
I
it's
do
good.
regret it. But you have to understand, like, we listened to like 12 albums for like this podcast, and I like on the first listen, I was like, nah.
Yeah.
Nah.
do you know what? I perfectly understand. It took me about 3 or 4 listens to go like, do I love it? Do I love it? I know I love it. Do you when you ask yourself, I'm in love with something, and you're really not sure why, and it's just that. So, but it's that sort of. I don't know. It's just. Anyway, so listen, wonderful listeners to our show. Check out Temper Veritas. For me, probably one of my top 5 albums of the year so far. But it's just a magical album. Good luck with the tour, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
It's been brilliant. It's been fascinating talking to you.
So interesting.
Really, really good. So, hopefully we'll be singing your Eurovision winning song next year. That'd be amazing. So, it'd be really cool. So, thanks for bye for now, and please like and subscribe if you really enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe, get our subscriber button up. Please share the video on social media, and go to our Facebook page. Thank you very much, guys, for listening. Take care, rock on, and speak soon. Bye for now.